Needle sites. You want to avoid the aneurysmal areas, and I know everybody wants to go for that because that's what they see. And the reason why those big areas are there is because that's where everybody is sticking. When you're not used to accessing a fistula, it's the easiest spot to go. Put the needle in, there's really, you could do it blindfolded probably, but we really would like you to avoid those areas if you can. Go above it or in between. Thin-walled areas are a huge no-no when assessing where you're going to place the needles. That thin-walled area is what it is that fistula has been stuck over and over repeatedly in that same area, and it's just like if a balloon, if you stretch it and stretch it and stretch it, it gets really, really thin. You stick, and the skin will become shiny. It's almost like the wall of the vessel disappears, and now the skin is actually the wall. So if you poke that, they could actually bleed out if it's gotten so thin. So you want to avoid that area. If you notice, if you have a patient that is not a dialysis patient, and you notice that is something that we probably should be aware of. That thin, shiny appearing, I don't know if you all have seen that, but that is definitely something you want to let us know about because that potentially can be really serious. And the blood flow going through a fistula is quite high. Some of them are up to 2,000. And that's a lot of blood going through that. And if that should break open, it doesn't take long to bleed out. So that's definitely something during your assessment you would want to make note of. Do not put the needles in those areas, and then I would just call us and tell us what you found. And then we can set up an appointment for them to see for a consultation with a surgeon. Narrowed areas, when you're feeling the fistula, assessing it, if there's areas that are really narrowed, you maybe don't want to put a needle in there. You're probably going to end up infiltrating it, so avoid those areas. Affected or reddened areas, you don't want to put a needle in. I wouldn't even put a needle in elsewhere if you notice that access is infected. I wouldn't put a needle in it at all. I would contact the provider and let them know that you've noticed there's an infection, or call us and ask us to come and look at it and see what our thoughts are. You want to ensure the needles are 1.5 inches, or we say 2 finger widths apart, between each other and from the anastomosis. You don't want to put a needle into the anastomosis. Keep it 2 finger widths away. Ensure that the vessel is straight. We do get some very tortuous vessels, and unfortunately when the surgeon goes in to create this fistula, they don't know how that vein is going to be until they actually make the connection, and the patient comes back in a month and sees us, and we're like, whoa. So sometimes you only have short little segments to put the needle. So you want to try to go where the straightest part is. And then rotate your sites. If you have a fistula that's, from here to here, use the whole thing. Even though some people are sticking in that aneurysmal area, if you're feeling comfortable enough, go elsewhere. You make use of that whole site. Some people, especially if they're dialysis patients, that's their lifeline. So we want to protect it. Also, going back up to the hematoma, if they've had a previous infiltrate, probably don't want to stick where you've noticed where there's some bruising going on. You may feel the access really, really nicely in that area, but the minute you go in, you're probably going to scoop up a little bit of a blood clot, and then you're not going to be able to pull any blood out of there. So avoid the hematomas as well.
So we do have a tip on how to locate where that anastomosis is.
Usually where the incision is. You see the incision part? That's usually where they've gone in and made the connection with the arterial in the vein. So we always say, put 2 fingers there and then above that. General rules. Some of them have a few incisions, but generally there's just the one incision there, and just kinda wanna stay away from that. It's the connection.
And doesn't it feel stronger?
It does,
different?
absolutely.
It definitely has.
It's a very, very strong thrill right there at that connection point. Some people can hear it, keeps them awake at night. Step ladder is what we use. Sometimes that doesn't always work, but you guys do 2 needles? Okay. Alright. And then the skin preparation, you want, like I said previously, you want them to make sure and use soap and water before coming into your unit. Chlorhexidine, back and forth scrubbing for 30 seconds. The iodine or the providone, make sure you don't go over the same area twice in a circular motion, and then let it dry for 3 minutes, because that's when it's killing all of the germs. Alcohol wipes, 60 seconds. Then don't touch the skin after you've prepped it. Sometimes people want to go back after they've, just to make sure, wipe it off again then if you do touch the skin. I don't know if you guys use any of this stuff. Do you use lidocaine or the EMLA cream? Some patients want the lidocaine, and it's just the slower you go with it, the less it hurts them. And you want to just go right under the skin. You don't want to go into the fistula itself. Small wheel appearance. And then I know some of our patients like the EMLA cream, but they have to put that on about 60 minutes prior to coming in. A lot of them wrap, like cling wrap or saran wrap around it. So just wipe that off with a wet cloth and then do your scrubbing. Ensure your supplies are ready. Arm as far out as you can get it with your palm up is the best way to do it. Sometimes I will ask them to rotate if you just can't feel it that way, ask them to move their arm just a little bit, and sometimes you can feel it. It's just a matter of moving their arm if you're having a hard time, but usually if you can get their arm to come out, I know a lot of your patients are lying in bed and it's kind of hard, but if you can get a pillow to just prop it up a little bit and get it away from the body and hyperextend it, or that elbow, that will bring it up even more. Don't be afraid to move their arm when you're assessing it to where you can feel it best. Always use a tourniquet with fistulas, and I know a lot of people say, oh, but I can see, it's nice and big. It's not really for you, it's for the life of the fistula. It makes the wall of the fistula tighter, tougher, easier to go in. So always use a tourniquet with a fistula, never with a graft. And then we talked about appropriate needle size. 17-gauge needles are just fine for you guys.
Why don't you use a tourniquet with the graft?
Clot it off.
Because it's a
It's synthetic. It's
Yeah.
it's a Gore-Tex. Right. I should have brought one with me. Have you guys ever seen a graft? I'll have to. Have you? Okay. I should have brought one with. The new fistula protocol, you really don't need to use that, I guess. I mean, it's just something for you guys to look at. It's a tool, resource. And then with the site right, I'll try to get that information to you. If any time you want to come in and come down and see our site right, that's fine. And I guess I could even maybe talk if somebody wanted to come down and see some fistulas, or even. We're down in the Eisenberg building, on lobby level. We're right below you.
Where's it?
Right across from, employee cafeteria, or the patient cafeteria. So we're right down there on the first floor. Yeah, absolutely.
You're on lobby level or first?
Lobby, right in the lobby level. We're right across pretty much from the patient cafeteria there.
First floor on the left after
It is, yes, it is. So we use the 3-point technique. Everybody, this is not a must. This is not a hard standard rule. whatever's comfortable for you guys in putting a needle in. I don't always use with the L. If you're left or right-handed, you want to stabilize the vessel, pull the skin back taut, and then stabilize it with your finger. That's kind of hard. Some people, I don't always use that. I like to place my finger on the vessel where I'm actually going to go because I can feel it. Sometimes you have to use your thumb and finger to stabilize it and go in. Everybody's different. We do have arms downstairs or over in the dialysis unit. If anybody wants to come down, call me if they want to come down and try to stick an arm. It's different than a real fistula, but it kind of gives you some play with your different techniques. Like I said, I like to place my finger along the fistula so I know when I'm putting my needle in where it's at. Sometimes if they're rolly though, you do have to hold them between your finger and your thumb and go in. And it's kind of just assessing how deep it is and that's where the tourniquet comes into play too. If you use the tourniquet, it's gonna plump it up a little bit more, and truly getting that arm out and hyperextending that elbow will work.
And if we're going in, we're always to needle. It would be probably advantageous to start with the draw first, the lowest, and work your way up.
Always. I always say start with the arterial. If they're, I think we're probably jumping ahead. I think that's in the next slide. But talking about an infiltrate on where to go. So you put your first needle in, everything goes great. Go in to put what we call the venous needle, the top needle, and that infiltrates. And there's like that much space between your needles, and you're like, oh, I can go here. You don't want to go below an infiltrate, you always want to go above it. And if it's a severe enough infiltrate, I would just remove the needles and let that rest. Depends on how bad it is. Sometimes we'll say rest a week, at least a day. Sometimes we'll just let them go and come back the next day. With that being said, if it's a dialysis patient, of course there's labs we have to check. I don't know what your protocol would be, if there's something you'd have to do to make sure that that's okay and reschedule their treatment for a day. You know, it really, you'd have to use your own judgment in determining how bad the infiltrate is and if they can just rest for a day, or if you maybe want to wait a week or whatever. That would be up to you to determine that. So that was kind of jumping ahead, but after you get the needle in, some of the nurses will go in a little ways and then pull back on the syringe to see if they're in the vessel. Once you get that flashback, then you can advance the needle. Some people are expert at it, and they know when they're in, and they just go ahead and insert it, and then they'll pull back, make sure. It's all up to you if you want to go slow and pull back a little bit each time, just to make sure that when you do actually get into that vessel, there's, it's all different. Any questions on that?
Doesn't it kind of feel like a pop?
Some of them are, and with the tourniquet on, you usually can feel that